Hello, everybody. Welcome to Nacheki's Africa is Watching podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. And today we have a special guest. He is Africa's tallest model. So before we do that, please make sure to share this live stream with friends and family, and let us know your opinions in the comments below. Let us know your opinions in the comments below. Give us your question. Today we'll talk about what's one's role towards Africa. What does Africa expect of you as an African, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a politician, if you're a professional sportsman, if you're a teacher, if you're a model. The question is for today's podcast is, what are you willing to give Africa? Like, what's your mission towards Africa? It's great to be African, it's great to be Pan-African, but it has to have something. So without further ado, after you've shared this stream, let's introduce our guest. Let's check if he's there.
Hello.
How are you, Bakare?
How are you faring?
Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you giving us your time to talk to us, to talk to people of Tonacheki, and tell them what you've been up to, right? So we can start with a bit of introduction. Tell people who you are, and we can start from there.
Thank you so much for having me.
Like I think the
first things ready.
Okay, the link is still stabilizing. Bear with us.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Just start from the top.
Oh, right. Thank you so much for having me. I am pretty humbled. And I must greet everybody watching from around the world, with a very grand African greeting, from the motherland. It is of utmost pleasure to be here today. And, going straight to the catch, my name is Bakare Mubarak. I'm regarded the tallest model in sub-Saharan Africa, a youth and cultural ambassador, an entrepreneur, and what else? I could say a lot about myself if you permit me the whole day,
sure,
but I'll leave it at that at the moment. Thank you so much.
Okay, so today we'll talk about one's mission as an African towards the continent, right? So
that's right.
The way life goes is you get your education, you get your career, you make money, you live your life, right? As an African. But as Pan-Africanists, we are special because other than doing what's expected of us, we go the extra mile to try to give back to the African continent, to try to share Pan-Africanism and make Africa, live Africa better than we found it. So maybe we can start with what you've been up to try to live Africa in a better state than you found it.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear us? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Sorry, some distractions from my device. Pardon me.
Okay, I can notice. Yeah.
Right.
So maybe the question is, what are you doing to live Africa better than you found it?
Thank you so much for that very thought-provoking question. You see, like I said in our earlier conversations before now, for me, I looked critically at all of the fiascos we have on the African continent, and I dug deep into all of these problems, and I realized one thing. One thing happens to be, it surfaces every time when looking at all of these problems. It happens to be our mindset, as Africans. and I realized that, as one of my mentors would say, he would say, Africa suffer what I call historical amnesia. We do not know our history, or we literally have forgotten our history. Some of us choose to forget, you know. Some of us don't even know at all. Some of us don't even try to find out, you know. So I started finding out. I started getting to understand our history even more. And I found out that a lot of things, and in simply put, I found out that virtually everything we think we know is a lie, right? And by so doing, I thought it was important to um, to let the change start from me, you know, to begin to embody an average young African that I yearn to be. I begin to, I felt it was very, very important to embody that African person that I see every single African on the streets across, and that was exactly what spurred me into action. The fact that I realized now more than ever, we need to take charge. You know, we need to take charge. We need to begin to tell our own narrative as Africans. We need to begin to tell our narratives. We need to, you know, act right. We need to set the pace, you know, because as we know, Africa is the cradle of humanity, you know, as the name implies, Al Kebulan, which means mother of mankind. So it is important that we set the pace. You know, the world has always drawn inspiration from the African continent. It is very important that we embody that. You know, even though our brothers and sisters outside of the African continent have been marginalized, we have also one way or the other been bamboozled to think otherwise. So I thought it was important to begin to embody this change, you know.
Oh, okay. So, like you've mentioned that we've been marginalized for so long. So recently, Nigeria created this law that only Nigerian models will be given opportunities in Nigeria for doing advertisements, because for a long time, those opportunities were going to foreigners. So maybe let's you can touch on that as a model from West Africa. How does it feel when you also feel the government is trying also to help you guys? Because before getting a model job, I think they would consider a European model or an American model or somebody fair-skinned rather than their own Nigerian person. So maybe what's your take on that?
I agree with you. That was a very interesting, that was actually a very, very interesting law that was passed. But personally, I must say I have a little bit of reservation because, to be honest, I'd rather have, if I were a decision maker, you know, with regard to that sphere in which that decision was made, I would have actually imposed even more taxes, if you know what I mean, right? Because it's honestly, so for instance, imagine you're trying to portray in an advertisement, you know, an exchange between Africa and the rest of the world. You would need other persons from other continents, if you know what I mean. So you cannot totally, in my opinion, my own reservation to that law was that we should have actually imposed even more taxes, you know, rather than cancellation, total cancellation. So yeah. But anyway, it was actually in a bid to actually give more voice, you know, give more visibility, give more inclusivity to local models. So it wasn't just very well thought through, I'd say. Thank you very much.
And while we're on this topic, the idea of we grew seeing white people advertising for us products, right? So you don't even know how your own people look like. So how refreshing is it that these days modeling agencies and then advertisement agencies prefer to use local models, people who look like the people who are buying the products?
Very well, very well. Interestingly, it made a lot of sense. It made me feel It's a new down, you know, it's a whole new down. Just to give you a little bit of backstory about something similar to what you talked about. Some time ago, there was a brand who came to Nigeria, and 2 years down the line, they were still using models from the part of the world this brand came from. And I had to send them an email to say, listen, this is your presence here on the African continent, on the motherland. This is West Africa, right? This is the most populous Black nation on the continent and in the world, you know, at large. You can't, it's ridiculous to have models, to not have one single model from this part of the world on your creatives, on your infographics. You know, I had to send that email saying this. And, you know, to an extent, they yielded. They yielded. So I'd say it was interesting. It was a very interesting decision, holistically.
And you're telling me you're using modeling as a vessel or a vehicle to achieve
Right.
your goal. So maybe tell us
Right.
a bit about that. Yeah.
Oh, well, like I said, actually, and like I always say, when necessary, modeling for me has not been the ultimate, or is not the ultimate. Rather, it has always been a deployment strategy to position myself for global impact. You know, as a staunch Africanist, I got to realize that there's a whole lot of fiascos that we have. And if we must triumph, it is very pertinent that we come back to a cultural-based system, right? So by virtue of that, I've been able to leverage on my unique status as a model to promote the African culture whilst incorporating art, tourism, as well as business in recent time, and other social, cultural, and humanitarian activities. You know, in recent time, say a couple years ago, actually, I was bestowed the honor as the African Youth Ambassador, one of the youngest ever to ever receive that award. At the time, this was about 3 years ago. 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 3 years ago. I was 24 at the time, and ultimately, it's the name of that platform is called the African Achievers Awards. You know, actually pronounced by the Forbes Award as one of the most prestigious awards on the African continent. And a year after that, I was actually I was bestowed the honor as an ambassador of business lasting culture and education to the global to the 6th Region Global Chamber of Commerce. And ever since then, I've been able to engage actively youth from across the African continent and beyond, you know, in thousands, basically. As of yesterday, I was still in a speaking engagement where I had to talk to young people from their senior secondary schools, basically senior secondary schools into A-level, you know, about finding your true identity as African youths, basically. And in recent time, I co-founded a company called Expedition 54, and the vanguard of our endeavor at Expedition 54 is creating a platform to connect and integrate African businesses with other businesses around the world, and laying particular emphasis on African diaspora businesses. And what actually spurred us to action, or what birthed that, is the fact that when you look at the harm that's been done to our reputation as Africans over the years, is a whole lot. It is tremendously alarming, right? When you look at this harm, a lot of people think no good about Africa because of the way we have been portrayed by the Western media, majorly, a lot of propaganda. You know, and I bet you if you're watching from anywhere across the world and you've never been to the motherland, I kid you not, 75% to 80% of those things you heard in the media is a lie about the African continent. It's a big lie, right? And a lot of people think it's not safe to be here. Oh, we are scammers. We are this. We are that. And by so doing, a lot of people who has been yearning to come back to the African continent to do businesses now think it's just about aid. It's just about help every time. They want to do business, but they don't know how to go about these things. They don't know who to connect with. They don't know who to trust. So we thought it was important that we co-found, that we start off Expedition 54. And as we have it, the 54 means the 54 African nations, actually, and that was how the company Expedition 54 was birthed. And in recent time, by virtue of my affiliation with the World Fashion Exhibition as the Goodwill Ambassador, and we're pushing, we are promoting a theme for the next 3 years, which is Africa is now, and Africans giving our lights to the world. So by virtue of that, we were given the World Fashion Exhibition Nigerian franchise to be able to produce here in Nigeria. And currently we are galvanizing to produce this noble show to host designers from a little over 60 countries around the world that'll be showcasing sustainable coutures here in Nigeria, the most populous African nation. Yeah. So as well, most recently, I was appointed the youngest ever advisory board member at the Black Professionals in International Affairs. Because we have been underrepresented. When you look dating back to imperialism, when at the Berlin conference, where we were actually fragmented, into the nations that we know today, there was no single African present. So it is important now more than ever that we begin to have even better representations, across the world. Thank you very much.
Definitely. It's long overdue.
Absolutely.
Like another question is, your height is 6'9", right?
Just 6'9".
That's quite tall. So and I'm assuming you're from Nigeria, right?
Say it again.
Like you're from Nigeria. You come from Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the southwestern part of Nigeria.
So for me, when I think height in Africa, I think South Sudan. I think some parts of DR Congo. I think some bits of Rwanda, Burundi.
Mm-hmm.
I think Senegal, right? But I don't think Nigeria. So maybe, like, you can tell us a bit about that. How is it?
Oh well, so you see,
in Nigeria, like in Nigeria, are you always the tall guy, or they're just tall people? It's just that us, we don't know.
So you see, Nigeria is very diverse. We have, as you know, we have over 500 ethnic groups. Pretty interesting ethnic groups. And we have successfully cohabited. Successfully, right? But the propaganda that the world hears is that there is chaos, there is this, there is that. But ultimately, there's a whole lot of diversity in Nigeria, right? Across all of this beautiful culture and whatnot. So by virtue of that, I think you get to see every variation of persons. You see every single variation of persons. The petite ones, the tall ones, the really tall ones. Unfortunately, recently we lost a friend of mine, a very dear friend, who happens to be the tallest man in Nigeria.
Wow.
He stood at about 7 feet 4 inches. Actually,
wow.
a giant indeed. So quite a number of people like that, pretty tall persons, but of course, my own kind of height is just a little rare. Just a little rare. So yeah, like I said, quite a variation of beautiful physiques, on the African continent, Nigeria having so much population of a little over 200 million people. So you can imagine. You can imagine.
Yeah, and in Africa, the genetic diversity is so vast. So technically,
I agree.
Like on this planet, the shortest person to ever exist most likely was an African, and the tallest person to ever exist will most likely be an African. This is because of our vast genetic differences, right? Yeah. So the genetic pool is quite varied, which is always a good thing.
Of course, this is the motherland, as the name implies, our Kebuland, right? This is the cradle. This is the cradle of humanity. This is where everything began. This is, so yeah, I agree with you.
So another question. So you've been, I'm assuming you've been in the modeling industry for some years now, and you've gained a lot of experience. So what is the best advice you could give to a young upcoming model? Maybe they're like 16 years old, or or in their 20s, they want to start entering the modeling world and start to be taken seriously. What advice would you give them?
Well, in all honesty, I like to be very sincere, especially when giving the younger generations advices. I like to keep it as real as possible. And I'd say point blank, the modeling industry everywhere around the world is a cutthroat industry, right? Which means it's a tough industry, because what the modeling industry does, if you do not understand some basics, is the fact that it makes you probably even question your being, makes you question yourself. But the truth is that you don't have no problem. It's just how it is, right? So much standard, that the world created, So for instance, you can imagine you going to, let me use myself as an instance, as an example, I tell you a little bit of backstory as well. Imagine going to an audition for a runway job, and then because I'm 6'9", a whooping 6'9", right? That's naturally just not economical for a designer to make a piece, because to be honest, he would not be able to probably sell that piece anymore, to someone else. So that might not be economical to them, so they might not want to put me on the runway simply because of that. Do you get my point? So it's important that I know that there's no cause for alarm, right? That is just very natural. So one of the things that I advise is that you must embrace rejections. It's just a natural phenomenon in every single endeavor that you find yourself in the world, not just modeling, not just the modeling industry. And good enough as we have it in the world today on a global scale, there's a lot of advocacy around body inclusivity and positivity as well. So I'd say that you should know that one of the tricks about being a model, or would I say one of the most important things to have in mind or at the back of your mind, is that you must understand that it is important to know that you should be comfortable in front of the cameras. That is important, because you're going to be in front of the cameras always. And like I said, you should embrace rejections, because it's just a natural phenomenon. Imagine you have, just before I got on this call, funny enough, an agent had reached out to me to say to me, oh, there's a particular casting ongoing, and they're looking for someone to take a role of a basketballer. Look at that. So if you have someone that is just about 5'6", they might not want to have such person on that commercial. It doesn't mean they're less of who they are, Exactly. Exactly.
So you think, especially in Europe, Africans who are in the modeling industry, you think they are more scrutinized than the other counterparts, just based on how they look?
Yes, I agree.
Standards, right? Because like this, people made these standards without us, right? So do you think there's some things that are unfair, right? And how they choose?
Yes, I agree with you that we have been underrepresented on the global scale. more than other models around the world. We have been more underrepresented. But as we have it in recent time, there's a whole lot of advocacy around that, and it's changing. In my opinion, it's changing more. It's changing in recent time. It's changing in recent time, and I hope that we see more of that. I hope that we see more of those change. And I hope that we get even more represented on the global scale. I personally have quite a number of friends, who work on a global scale. Across Europe, across the other parts of the world as well. Yeah.
So also for people who are curious what it's like to be a model, maybe you can just take us through your day where you have a gig, you have a client, how you prepare things. Somebody needs to know things.
Yes, I see someone.
Yeah.
I see a commentary. This is just absolutely what it is. Someone said you have to develop a thick skin. Out of the 99 no's, you are looking for the one. Absolutely. Yes. That's exactly what it is, to be honest with you. And, when you look at that and you relate that to the world view, naturally, that's how the world is, basically. Before you get a yes, or before you attain a success, there must have been a lot of trials. There must be tribulations, there must be hurdles that you must actually triumph, basically. Yeah. So going forward, talking about my typical day, basically, I love to eat healthy, basically. So in the morning when I wake up, sometimes I do intermittent fasting. So sometimes I take shake. I take it could be moringa. It could be moringa shake. I don't know if you know that herb. It's a very interesting herb. Great antioxidant as well.
Definitely.
Yes. And I take a lot of smoothies as well. A lot of fruits. A fruit blend. And I have a pop culture that I've developed. A lot of people on my personal WhatsApp space, precisely, they know every time when I post my shake, or my fruit blend, I say indulge. So a lot of people now have that as a slogan, basically. So I try to take that in the morning, to kickstart the day, and typically I do a little bit of workout, as well as going straight to the day. Like I said, for me, I do quite a number of other things besides modeling. So by virtue of that, I get to also attend to my business. I act in the capacity as the co-founder and CEO of Expedition 54. So every other day, there's a new task ahead, especially now that we're galvanizing for our flagship projects, So usually of course, I have busy schedules a lot of times, but I try as much as possible to rest as well. For instance, about a week ago, I was invited to another state in the southwest, in the southwestern part of Nigeria as well, to commission a restaurant, an African indigenous restaurant that has just opened up. I had to take the very first train, to that city. I got back in the night, that same day, and I actually went straight to another event, that happens to be an art event. Like I said to you, I actually do quite a number of things in the art space as well, art promotion, as well as a little bit of brokerage in recent time. So I try as much as possible to take time off to rest, when I have really, really busy week. And I love to travel. I love good food as well. I cook to an extent as well. So these are things I take time off from. And I just about a couple weeks ago, I tweeted, I said, I don't know if this is weird, but one of my hobbies is learning. So one of the things that I do as well is learning. I like to learn a lot, listen to some audio books, read some books, as well as articles that are actually impactful, because I try as much as possible to be impact driven. So yeah, I think that's basically what it is.
And for your height, when you're taking maybe like you're doing a shoot or you're walking in the runway, because you're taller than the average model, right? I
That's
think
right.
the standard of being a model is usually like between 5'7" and 5'9", right? Because you're way
That's right.
above that. What
That's right.
like what extra things do you have to do so you can manage to fit in?
So for real, I think in my own case, I don't believe in the concept of fitting in. I believe so much in the concept of creating opportunities. I believe in standing out if you must. We are different people. That's why we have what we call the deoxyribonucleic acid, the DNA, unique, right? So I sincerely believe that every human is unique, right? And the more reason why I have been able to create a very, very unique niche, by leveraging on my status as a model to promote the African culture whilst incorporating art. And in all of this capacity, I've been able to work exceptionally well, and I've been able to, as God will have it, attain some interesting heights. Some time ago, I was endorsed by the largest art gallery in West Africa, by virtue of my contribution, and as well, I've been able to work hand in hand with some kings, especially the most prominent kings across the southwestern part of Nigeria. And the reason why I deployed that strategy is because these kings and queens, right, are the most, they are the utmost custodian of our culture. So if I must promote the culture, right, it is important that I create that synergy. So I'll say that I tried as much as possible to be unique in everything that I tend to set out to do, in every of my endeavor, right? And I try as much as possible to be ethical enough, in all of this endeavor. So really, I just don't force it. I do it effortlessly, and basically, I just go with the flow. If that answers your question perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. So let's
Right.
take in a few questions from the chat. So Aisha is asking you, what message will you give the African government for us to be protected when we want to invest back in the motherland?
Oh, well, in honesty, I'll say to you, first things first, you must understand that there's a whole lot of propaganda going on about the state of security, about the security in Africa. It's not as worse as people claim it is. It's not as worse as the Western media especially portrays it. These things are actually orchestrated. And some of these things that you see are decoy. They're decoy plans for some other agenda, really, right? Now, let me give you an instance about my country, right? My country, Nigeria, has a tremendous population. In fact, in less than a year, we would be top on the youth population index. That's how much the population is, right? Which I believe is a blessing rather than a curse, right? But when you look at this population, let's use the police force as an example, right? Let's use the police force as an example. Now, the police force, right? Can you see me? Hello?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, perfect.
I
let's use the police force as an example, right? We don't even have enough police to begin with. That's one. Now, when you look at this police demography, half of the police force are deployed to the so-called VIPs and the VVIPs. Now, tell me, logically, do you think we would still be alive if the country was really that bad, security-wise? Do you think so?
Yeah,
now,
no.
Look at the statistics of how many people get missing in the United States on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
Over 60,000 people get missing in the United States on a yearly basis. Over 60,000 people. Go to some part of Europe. Use the UK as a case study. There's a statue in the UK called the Knife Angel. The Knife Angel is a massive statue made out of knives that have been used to kill people across the United Kingdom. There's a whole lot of advocacy about that. But guess what? You don't hear these people clamor about these things and scare tourists off their country.
Definitely.
So really, I say to you point blank, in all honesty,
are you there? While he tries to connect back, I'll even give you guys a few examples. So there's this guy who was like some European afraid to come to Kenya because he had, I think 5 years ago, there was a Westgate shooting, right? And in the same instance, a person like that would easily go to America, where they have a shooting that we have once a decade. In America happens almost at a daily basis with even more casualties, right? So that just tells you how much propaganda Western media pushes out. If there's a small incident in Africa, it's blasted throughout the media 24/7. If there's another mass shooting in America, people just say thoughts and prayers and sweep it under the rug, right? So that is the type of differences that we're talking about when it comes to how the West treats Africa as compared to how the West treats you guys in the United States. So you can carry on.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear you now. You can carry on.
Yeah, pardon me. My phone actually just tripped off. I think the network was just a little bit of fluctuation. Pardon me for that. Pardon me. So as I was saying, right, it is very, I must say that the government should do better when it comes to security, but to a very great extent, right, to a very great extent, you can visit the African continent. And I repeat, virtually everything you hear about the African continent, the bad media, the propaganda, is not true. Virtually everything. We are beautiful people. The way that we have been portrayed in the media is to show the world that we are poor and we need help. We need aid. That's a lie. It's a blatant lie. And I'll tell you how, just citing one example, right? Look at the Democratic Republic of Congo as an example. The Democratic Republic of Congo is deposited with the highest amount of natural resources on the globe. Rwanda is one of the neatest African countries and one of the neatest in the entire world. You go to the coast of the Indian Ocean Islands, you go to Zanzibar, you see rivers and streams, I would say oceans, I beg your pardon, seas as blue as the skies, you know? But people prefer to leave the African continent to go to Dubai, where we have artificial beaches.
Yeah,
you know, isn't that a very, very interesting paradox? You know,
very, definitely
very interesting paradox. And we have 54 countries on the African continent. 54 countries. Africa is not a country. It is important that we emphasize that. So there are quite a number of. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Like I'm saying, and it's all just due to the media, how Dubai is portrayed compared to how Africa is portrayed.
Absolutely. Africa is a fantastic place. It's a fantastic place. I beg your pardon. We've got fantastic countries, you know, on the African continent, and there's a lot of opportunities, tremendous opportunities. Start off a brand, you know, a product in Nigeria. Look at how much people across the world, when they want so much cheap clout and whatnot, they come to the Nigerian Twitter space. You know, look at what is happening with the Guinness World Record now. Nigerians are smashing the record.
Yeah, definitely.
Every other time. So much of energy, so much of you know, it's just a continent of so much diversity. And there's a whole lot of opportunity here. The current existential technology for batteries, the natural resources which lies here on the African continent.
Yes, yes.
This is where you get the chocolates. This is where you get the cocoa. This is where you get the best of coffees around the world. We've got fantastic cuisines. And the world has drawn inspirations from this. Look at Louis Vuitton, for instance. Louis Vuitton has constantly drawn inspiration from the Masai Shuka in Kenya.
Yeah, like for me, like you always call it copying, because that's not inspiration, because sometimes they just take it directly. Then
absolutely, without no remorse, without no credit.
They tried to trademark the word shuka, leso, kikoi, those African words. So they tried to so let's answer Toyosi's question. So what do you think about the proposed One Africa currency? Is the probability high that the African leaders will agree to do this one time? So I think she's talking about this. The ECOWAS had proposed to have their own currency, but I think it was sidelined by like France with its CFA, right? They kind of interfered with it, and I think the dream died.
Yeah. I think it's a fantastic. It's going to be a fantastic development, in my opinion. I think we are long overdue for that. We are really, really long overdue for that. And just as recently in recent time, President Ruto has been clamoring for that as well. And I heard in a speech of his talking about how Kenya want to trade with other African nations, and they're using dollar. Where does dollar comes in that kind of transaction, for crying out loud? Where does dollar comes in? Why is it needed? So I agree, and I am in full support. And this has been an agenda, even before the former president of Libya, President Muammar Gaddafi, this was an agenda he was really true to, So I think we are long overdue. That's what I'd like to say. And I think it's a fantastic move, I must confess. And I think I'm loving what is happening with the open borders in recent time. Fantastic development. I see no reason why we should begin to need visas, or why we should need visas to move around African continent, because really, when you look critically, all of these borders are artificial. We were fragmented at some point in time. We are one. And I, in fact, a need further, I am also a staunch advocate of unification of Africans on the continent and Africans outside of the African continent. These are our brothers and sisters, whether we like it or not. Our brothers and sisters and cousins and nephews, basically. So it's important, and I think it's a whole new down for us.
So let's continue the question. So a question for you. Do Africans want to work with African Americans? What's your honest understanding on this?
Yes, my honest understanding.
Tell us out. Yeah.
Right. Pardon me for truncating that. Please go ahead.
So why did some of the African leaders sell us off? What it is because of the tribe difference? Thanks. So let me answer this a bit, right? So there's this misconception that it's like Africans sold other Africans because, like, during the slave trade, right? So African Americans always feel like Africa betrayed our fellow brothers. So, like, let me just set the record straight. So technically, Africans did not do it willingly. It was more of Africans didn't do enough to fight off the raiders, the thieves. So this is how Europeans used to do. Like, they used to get thieves, kidnappers. They pay them off, right? And they go to other regions. They steal other Africans. So it was our job as like the kings in the African kingdom to protect our people. But that didn't happen. So most Africans always think that these people sold, like we sold our brothers cause of greed or what. No, no, no. Like things just like we just didn't do enough to protect our fellow brothers, right? Yeah, but
Absolutely.
yeah, and also people who are tricked, people who are bribed off, and nobody's perfect, right? If you give somebody, like they always say, everybody has a price, right? Yeah. So it wasn't out of willing. You go to Portugal with a ship, right? So like this is how I put it. The only person who can say they were sold uh, um, as slaves by Africans are the people that the African kings put on a ship. They went till the Americas and sold them there. But if you are sold from the coast of Ghana, if you're sold from the coast of Nigeria, I really don't think that was like on purpose or through wanting. So it was
I agree.
yeah, yeah, and they try to push. Western media has been recently trying to push this misconception of because Africans are awake about the reparations, right? So because people are talking reparations, Western media has tried to push this narrative of, oh, it's the African kings and the chiefs who sold you to white people, right? Like this is like the latest push from Western media. Everybody's saying it, BBC, especially the BBC, because them, they're British, they benefited, right? The Dutch, they've been apologizing, right? Recently, I think they apologized for slavery, right? So now they've got this agenda. They're trying to push this slavery on Africans, like, oh, it's you guys who sold. So if somebody has cannons, right, and he's saying, hey, we will murder all of you, right, like we'll just destroy all of you, like the way they did for Benin and ban everything, unless you give us these certain people so that you can continue living. Then you give out, then years later you blame the person who was held hostage for trying to survive, right? Like I don't think Africans gave people slavery because they wanted to, right? It was more like do or die, right? People with cannons, people with superior technology. Some tried to fight. The Ethiopians fought them off, right? So it's
Absolutely.
just that, like, our only fault is that we didn't fight enough. We were more on survival mode. We were trying to survive and not fighting back. So like that's maybe just a clarification on that Western propaganda that they are recently trying to push, right? Especially on African Americans, through social media. Those are the articles where they push them so that they, like how they start brainwashing people slowly, right? Yeah. So,
I agree with you, brother. I agree with you, and I think you've said it all. But come to think of it, this is a question that we should all ask ourselves.
definitely.
Do we really think genuinely that the people, the demography of people that has actually committed the greatest crime, across humanity for over 400 years, do you think they're going to tell the story the wrong way? Or do you think they're going to shoot themselves in the leg? That's the question you should always ask yourself.
Yeah,
They'll never
definitely.
shoot themselves in the leg.
Yeah,
Definitely. And that's the
Like
reason why now more than ever, it is very important, very pertinent that as Africans across the world, we should begin to tell our own narratives.
Definitely.
Utmost facts, unmistakable facts about us, basically. It's important that we begin to do that.
Definitely, because like in recent times, I'm sure you've been seeing it, especially from the African American community. There's this big push by this Western media organization trying to push this narrative so that they pit African Americans against Africans, right? So when the unity comes, like they're repeating their techniques, divide and conquer, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah,
And some people also have the misconception of, oh, African leaders are this and that. To be honest with you, that's another very big misconception right there.
Definitely. Oh,
Africans have.
like one good example is this idea of African leaders are corrupt and European ones are perfect and American ones are perfect. So I can tell you this on fact. Your American senator, your American congressman, your American politician is 100 times more corrupt. They deal in 100 times more shady stuff than any African leader. Believe me, like
I
the
agree.
amount of money that flows through, like especially in the American system, the American political system. If you just know how dirty it is, right? They like but in America they've marketed their corruption and they call it lobbying, right? You know, so in Nigeria, if a business want to maybe spill some chemicals in a river nearby, right? Then they pay a politician something under the table, right? To do that. They call it corruption. But in America, what they do is that they pay it directly. The lobbying company pays it directly to the politician. The politician changes the laws so that it's legal to do the same thing, to pollute the river. So the only difference is that just how it's done. Some they trick you with laws and papers. It's okay to dump the pollutant in the ocean, right? So they try to make the wrong thing look right before, right? So that's how corruption works in the United States. Just because people lie to you and tell you what they're doing is legal or there's laws approving it, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And that's how corruption in America works, right? So I'm not saying African leaders are not corrupt, right? Nobody is perfect. There's so many corrupt African leaders, but what I can assure you, like your common senator is 10 times more corrupt than any African president, and that one, like it's a fact, right? So let's answer this question quickly. So it's like what? So somebody Unity is asking, what about the business deals with British etc. Called the white man? Is it still okay for Africans to deal with the West after all the years of being exploited? A good example, you mentioned chocolate, right? So a good example is that Ghana and Ivory Coast produce, I think, 90% of the world's chocolate, right?
That's right.
But Switzerland and Belgium make 95% of all the profits on chocolate, while the only producers get peanuts. They get less than 1% of the chocolate profits, right? So should we just cut all ties and rebuild things ourselves, or what? Or like, what do you think is the way forward?
So in my opinion, right, I don't believe we should cut all ties, right? I don't believe we should cut all ties. But of course, it is so now take this for instance. We could say to the world that, listen, we are not exporting any of this natural resources anymore. Or we say we want to export only 10% of it. If you really want to have a chocolate plant, come down to the African continent. And you must employ 80% of workers who are African descent, right? And in the next few years, we should be trained as well. I don't know if I'm making some sense. You say a Tesla, definitely. We are not giving you any of these natural resources. Come to the African continent and create a plant where you make this product, right? And employ African descent. So really, there are always ways around it. We just need to strengthen all of our diplomatic precedents, to make sure that we do this well. And I believe we can never do this in isolation. It is important that we unite. We must create a formidable force amongst African leaders, in my opinion.
Let me even give you another example. Like I was recently doing some research on coffee, right? We wanted to do a list on Africa's largest coffee producers, right? So when I'm doing the research, I'm seeing Germany is number 3, the 3rd largest producer in the world for coffee, right? And I'm like, Germany doesn't even grow one bean of coffee. So what happens is that Germany gets this coffee at an extremely highly discounted price, and then they resell it to Europe, making it the 3rd largest coffee producer while not producing coffee, right? So this is a kind of exploitation that we are definitely talking about, right? So Bakare has gone. So as he comes back, let's go through some of the questions. Yeah. Let's finish up on our discussion. So maybe if I can ask you a question is, what is your parting shot? What can you tell Africa, Pan-Africanists on the way forward, or how to on, how can I put it? How to make Africa, as we started talking about discussion, how to make Africa better than they found it, right? The connection.
So I suppose, I suppose I'm having a little bit of. Do you hear me?
Yeah, sure. So like just
right. Okay. So there was a little bit of problem with the microphone, I suppose, but I can hear you clearly now.
Oh, okay. So like you can give people a parting shot, or not the like what like to motivate them to make Africa better than they found it.
Could you say that again? Hello?
Like I want you to give the people, like people tuning in, a parting shot that will encourage them to leave Africa better than they found it.
In honesty, it is very important that we understand that we were African first before we became any other thing else. That is something I want us to know. And we must understand, because so I'll just explain this. A lot of Africans have been bamboozled to think they are so inferior, right? So by virtue of that, they prefer to get themselves into neocolonialism, right? So by so doing, they grow some really gruesome mindsets, and they don't really care about bringing the African continent into the mud, right? And saying very, very unpalatable things on the social media. We must understand that the more we do all of this, the more we bring the African continent down, and the more we join that agenda, right? And then the more it becomes even worse, and the more we are even stereotyped across the world. So it is important. I think we all have the responsibility. We all have the responsibility to uphold Africa. We have the responsibility to uphold our culture, to uphold our to uphold our heritage, to uphold our credibility, you know, to uphold our identity. It is very important. And I think that the people who are representing us at the global scale as well, you know, be it at the diplomatic space, be it music, be it the creative space in general, we must understand that we all have that responsibility to represent the right way we can. And we must tell the right narrative. We all have that responsibility, and posterity will actually smile at us if we begin to tell the true narrative about Africa, and the unmistakable ones. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a perfect place to leave it. So kindly let us know where people can find you, your social medias, your current projects.
Right. Majorly, I use Instagram. I have a website as well. Just my name, Bakare Mubarak. Bakare with an underscore, and Mubarak with a double K. Actually, that cut across all of my social media, pretty much. And my website, www.bakaremubarak.com, as well as Expedition, www.expedition54.com. Thank you very much.
You'll write them in the comments below, and we'll put them in this video in the description so people can easily find you, right?
Say it again.
We'll put that information in our description so people can easily find you, right?
Oh wow, I think I'm having difficulties with the microphone.
Okay.
But nonetheless, in absence of that, I'd like to also say that I use this medium to actually welcome every single person watching us to the African continent. You know, I do a lot of tour guiding as well, and I'll be very, very glad to actually welcome everybody, and anyone that is coming to the West Coast. I'll be very glad if you get in touch with me, I'll be very glad to actually facilitate the issuance of a pilgrim certificate for every single person. Thank you so much. And I recommend for every African diaspora, it is important that you try as much as possible to visit the African continent at least once in your lifetime. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bakare, for joining us. So guys, thank you so much. Sorry for the little technical difficulties, but you know, there's nothing we can do about that. So we appreciate you guys for taking your time to join us for 1 hour. Hear Bakare talk about his career and his mission for Africa. Thank you so much. Make sure to share this stream when it finishes so more people can hear this message. We always appreciate you guys. Thank you for the questions. And it's been me, Mike Mushi from Tunacheki. And always remember, Africa is watching.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Cheers. Asante sana.